Hello, everyone, and welcome back to coverage. I am one of your hosts, Mason Clark, joined by Pro Tour champion Andrew Ellenberg. And we have Drake Sasser and Jarvis Yu on screen. There's us. Andrew, I'm so sorry that Drake forgot you being a Pro Tour champion. This is, we have to call it an equivalent exchange, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you become lost and washed and forgotten, and apparently now that Drake has not remembered who I am, that's now the state that I exist in.
Well, you know what? For some of us who have some history and love for the game, who don't play Commander all the time, we do have some small amount of respect for that. Not enough to listen to what you say, but enough to know that you won the Pro Tour. And speaking of winning, we are actually going into our final round of Swiss right now, Andrew. So a little update on the stories. Dave Shields, who we've watched the last two rounds, it looks like Dave has drawn into the top 12. So congratulations to Dave. That means we will see him later today, assuming he gets picked for one of our future matches. So if you're a fan of the Jerry T podcast with Dave Shields, congratulations there. We'll have more creativity action for you. But we have some other matches actually getting set up right now for us to watch, and we've got a pretty exciting one as the first one. If you like grinding interactive Magic, Andrew, we have the Omnath Mirror.
Yeah, I think a matchup that both of us have played way too much of over the course of our lives. I'm not entirely sure how the new cards, such as the Beanstalk, have impacted the four-color mirror, but it is truly a classic slugfest.
Yeah, so let's say you're sitting down, you just got your Omnath deck. What are you looking to do if you sit across the Omnath Mirror? What are some of the key interaction points?
Well, I think that the most important aspect of the matchup is to play extremely, extremely quickly. And I say that and it sounds kind of like a joke, but like this matchup, neither player has kind of a true kill condition. There's no true knockout punch. No card can't be answered. So everything revolves around just trying to grind endlessly, more or less forever. But the biggest breakpoint is certainly that if you stick an Omnath, if you play Omnath and they don't Solitude immediately, often the mana advantage can snowball to the point where the game gets out of reach. Obviously, the ring gives you kind of an unending source of cards, but Omnath is the only source of mana. Removing the ring is also tricky in this matchup because if you leyline binding it, then later your leyline binding gets besage you. That's sort of a huge blowout. So you sort of have to be careful on what you bind. You kind of want to bind things that aren't too bad if they end up at some point coming back, because they often will. So yeah, I mean that's kind of how the matchup goes. Ren is also great. Obviously, it helps you keep hitting land drops. If you start missing land drops in this matchup, your opponent will start doing more with their mana, and you'll lose that way. But again, there's no one knockout exactly.
Nice. Well, we've seen Cody Blazers here develop the ring, got answered by Gabriel with a Leyline Binding. And one of the takeaways I took from you there, Andrew, was that mana seems to be one of the most important factors. And Cody had the Ren for 2 turns, but had no fetch lands. So it was just kind of hanging out. So, what looks to maybe be an early sign of an advantage for Cody actually kind of equal here with Gabriel, as he's playing his own Ren with a fetch land in the graveyard.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a pretty big advantage for Gabriel. I mean, certainly not the end of the world. Again, lots of different things matter, but if you hit all your land drops, eventually he'll have 9 lands in play and Cody just won't.
We are seeing a Fletchland fetched. And it looks like maybe a Teferi Time Raveler pulled to the front. We might see, because Cody doesn't look to have any more lands, maybe we'll see something like unsummon the Leyline Binding and pick up the Ren to get a land back. We'll have to see how Cody wants to play it, though.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that would be pretty good value for him. Maybe he can do better, but if he waits on the Teferi, he risks getting it hit by, like, Prismatic Ending or something of that nature. So definitely a reasonable argument to make to just get the value.
Oh, it looks like we are going to Prismatic Ending the Ren Insects.
Interesting. So Cody's maybe indicating that he has plenty of lands in hand, that he's not really stressed about hitting his next land drop or whatever, and therefore he's just going for kill. Although maybe he just also thinks that for some reason Gabriel needs those lands. I'm not exactly sure what that play communicates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the fetching is the part that's really confusing to me. But Cody obviously has been playing 4-color Omnath extremely well to get here today, has some plans, and I can't fully see his hand, so, who am I to judge as Gabriel is going to fetch in a turn, picking up this Zagoth Triome.
Yeah, and something interesting I'm noting here is that it looks like Gabriel has Preordains, which I think is unusual in 4 colors, so certainly not unheard of. But I'm not exactly sure what that means about the rest of his list. Like, what are the Preordains in place of, in some sense, right?
Yeah, I think some players have trimmed on some of the early interaction, like Bolt, to make room for Preordain, to kind of, in the late game, have another card to sort of find some action in the early game, make sure you curve out and develop. So we might see that Gabriel's down on Bolts, which, normally isn't a huge deal, but can matter in some of these Planeswalker fights.
Yeah, I mean, in the mirror, I wouldn't say Bolt is a liability, but it's not best. I imagine if you could trade your Bolt Security in the Focal Mirror, you would happily do so most of the time, even though occasionally that would punish you. But it can get weird because it means your red alts can't kill your opponent, which sometimes does actually matter.
We're gonna see Cody play Fairy Time Revel, unsummon the One Ring, pick up Sacred Foundry, play it, half return. Looks like we're gonna cast a Halfling and pass back to Gabriel.
Go ahead.
And I mean, we're kind of just still at parity here. Neither player has really been able to do anything that gives a substantial advantage. This ring has never gotten that crucial second activation. Obviously, first activations are fine, but Cody's been handling it decently well. We'll sort of see how it goes from here.
Looks like Gabriel does have Omnath. No fetch land in hand just yet, but that draw trigger from Omnath could change everything. Cody thinking about solituding maybe.
Yeah, so this is pretty interesting. Often when you see a player playing Omnath, the best time to solitude it is after the fetch land is broken. Because if they don't have the fetch land, then you don't have to do it. And even if they do, you sort of force them to expend it as opposed to being able to play. But it seems like Cody's just firing it off right here immediately. I'm not totally sure why, but maybe a small misstep there. But yeah,
Yeah,
it does
looks like
nice with the life.
Yeah, Gabriel jumped on that Hall Foundry hand to hand, shocked in. Looks like we might be playing something like Preordained, maybe a Leyline Binding. Yeah, it's going to be Preordained. Also, for viewers at home, Cody seems to have his graveyard at the top pile and his exile at the bottom. That's why there are two sideways piles. Maybe Honorok can get him to indicate a little bit better, but that is what's going on down there. That's why we have two sort of graveyard piles. As a Fury was found, and now it's going to be a vote clearing off Cody's board. Cody has nothing left, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty savage. In general, when you Omnath and you force them to evoke on it, instead of doing something like holding up a land binding or like hard casting a Solitude, that's a pretty big advantage for you. The first player to slam a turn like an Omnath with unexpended land drop is often a pretty big edge, and you see that Gabriel's going to achieve this, got a few cards off the ring, and Cody's pretty much out of gas. It's almost always possible to make a comeback in this matchup, and I think that is still true, but it's going to be a tough road to hoe.
Yeah, as we do see Gabriel activating the ring, that's going to cost him a life. We get him a card for his troubles. Looks like he is going to fetch end of turn here, pick up some land. So, if you're a Cody fan, what are you looking to draw to sort of start getting out of this, right? Because Gabriel has more mana, has the One Ring, and has, slightly more cards in hand currently. What does Cody need to try and start mounting a comeback?
Well, fundamentally, he has plenty of mana. He just needs resources. So maybe if Cody could draw the One Ring, play it, draw a card. That card is an answer to Gabriel's One Ring. Then we might be talking, especially if that ring isn't answered, or if it is answered, but then Cody rapidly finds another one, something like that. But certainly it's not easy or great. Just that fundamentally, if Gabriel draws kind of a string of lands, nothing that great, and Cody draws the right things, well, Gabriel's still at 17, he's under no pressure. It's just that Gabriel has a million cards.
And it looks like we're going to play Fairy Time Raveler to start the turn. Minus on nothing, looks like pick up the draw, drew a bolt.
Sure.
Looks like we are playing a Delighted Halfling. Has a Sacred Foundry, hasn't made the land for turn yet. Sometimes you'll see players hold it for things like Omnath. Looks like that is what Gabriel's doing here, decides to not pull ahead on mana and stay at parity.
We go to the next one.
All right.
Alright.
Cody's had enough, and that's pretty reasonable. Again, he might have some odds shots to win, but with the clock being concerned, the quick concession cost be reasonable, just so that you have enough time to win 2 games in the 4-color mirror.
Yeah, like you said, right, playing fast is what matters. So getting that game over with when you're basically dead after your draw, stepping on maybe another land, good time to go. And we see Cody here checking out his sideboard guide, figuring out exactly what he wants to bring in. What are some cards you gravitate towards here? Because 4-color has so many different types of cards for each player. It looks like we have Dovin's Veto and Emrakul from Cody. What are some cards you might want to play alongside that, even though we don't know the player's sideboards?
Well, in general, I don't mess with the formula that much in 4-color mirror. I mean, certainly if you have it, Emrakul is amazing, and Cody having it is I think, a pretty big edge if Gabriel doesn't. But most of your cards are just pretty reasonable. For example, you can cut Prismatic Ending, but Prismatic Ending is actually kind of nice as a permanent answer to the ring, since Land Buddy can always be removed, so it's the only thing that permanently handles it. Bolt is generally bad, and I would try to get my Bolts out if I have the cards to do it, but even Bolt is fine, just killing their turn 1 halfling is pretty decent, honestly. And kind of, the matchup is more about pulling ahead on that thing first than about kind of raw cards frequently. So I often just don't sideboard that much. Now, Besage could come in as well. I think there's some different opinions on this. I usually like a few Besages, not like all of them. I like like 2. You want to be able to consistently answer land binding, so you want to be able to find one to recur with your rings. But once you found one, all the ones aren't that great, and it's not like priority have early. So I think you generally want like a medium number. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. I wouldn't expect these players to do anything too radical. I don't think that like there's that many cards that come in.
Gotcha, makes sense. I also sort of like having the second Besage. You know, like you mentioned, leyline binding can become a bit of a liability, and that is a good way to sort of get someone on that. So, and it's a good verbal spell that we are leaning on a lot in these years. We're to see what Gabriel did. Gabriel looked like Hudson Delight halflings. I don't know exactly what he brought in, but there was definitely one in the sideboard. I doubt the fourth one was hiding out there to begin with. If so, that might be the tap. You know, we might have to look at that. It does look like, by the way, here, Cody, 10-2, got paired down against Gabriel. So Cody was probably hoping to draw in this round and now going to have to play. We have to see exactly where it breaks here. We don't know the exact record you need for top 8. We know Dave Shields made it at X and 2. We also know that it's top 12 for this SCG. So that's something SCG has been doing ever since kind of post-pandemic. And that is, you know, making it so a little bit more people play. And basically, if you haven't experienced that before, the 1st through 4th players just get a bye into the normal top 8. And then 5th through 12th play. And then, you know, whoever's left kind of goes into a normal top 8 bracket from there. So that is what's going to be happening with us. It just means more Magic and more people playing it out. As we do see an Adotha Triumph and a pass on the turn for Cody. Into Zagoth Triumph back. Oh, sorry, that's in Dotha, I believe, from Gabriel.
Yeah, I think it's double in Dotha, which is a little interesting. That there's some debate over the exact mix of 2 triumphs that we're playing, although I think a lot of people do have the Dotha these days.
Yeah. Gotta love the Dotha. I think that's like my first time getting a triumph wrong on coverage. It's kind of embarrassing.
Yeah, that is embarrassing, honestly. Although it is kind of hard when they use the weird art ones. I think the kind of stock art ones are pretty straightforward to identify at this stage.
Yeah, well, see, that was the whole thing, is I got my job on Energy knowing the weird one. That's the only reason they hired me, down to my good looks, you know? As we do see a Teferi Time Reveler for the turn on Cody. It's like Gabriel's giving it the head nod. And just taking up. Any concern about just immediately cashing this in case of a card like Prismatic Ending? Or do you think, you know, theoretically Cody's pretty happy with something like that happening for his Teferi Time Reveler?
Well, okay, so in general, immediately cashing Teferi, the downside of that is that you expose it to Ren. Now Gabriel doesn't have a Ren, so you don't need to worry one out the top, presumably. Which does kind of push you towards minusing it, but I do think a decent amount of the time you're happy for them ending your Teferi, right? The question here is kind of, if you're Cody, how do you feel about that? Depending on your hand, that might be what you want. Specifically, as we discussed, Prismatic Ending is the only permanent answer to the Ring. Because Leyline Binding can always be bounced, or Presaged, or what have you. Which means the only real punish here is if Gabriel has another Prismatic Ending, which good beats at that point. You just get, you know, 1-for-1 on your cherry, I guess, but it's not that big a deal. Even if that does happen, Cody will be presumably the first player to play on with fetch backup, although I'm not 100% sure if he has the fetch. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Looks like Teferi Time Reveler is going to be the play here from Gabriel. Unsummoning the Ring, taking a draw.
And like, unsummoning the Ring the Mirror, okay, it's fine. You do it sometimes, it denies them 2 cards, but you're not really getting anywhere. You're expending your Teferi's ability, and they still have the Ring. It hasn't been answered. It's going to start ticking up just the same. In fact, if the Omnath sticks here, Cody could even go Omnath, fetch, re-ring, which is pretty brutal.
It's insanely brutal, and Cody has 3 Omnaths, so all he's really losing is his turn if, you know, the Omnath gets interacted with, and has so much gas. I'm gonna love to see how Cody is gonna play this game, because so far he's done a really good job of navigating Gabriel into what he wants. Looks like he is just gonna stick with just the 1 ring for now.
Interesting. So, I'm not sure I understand this play precisely. I mean, I assume he's worried about something like Solitude, Untap, Omnath, Fetch, something to that effect. But even if that happens, because of Teferi, like, you can't really interact. So, like, if everyone is Omnath Fetch, they get to do it anyway. And basically, I think that is a little conservative from Cody.
Agreed, yeah. Yeah, I think I would have slammed the Omnath. That's the biggest thing that I noticed from picking up and playing Omnath last year, you know, was that people just didn't play their Omnaths enough early. As we see, Gabriel here even played his land first just to make sure that he'll get the life. and is going to fetch up a leyline binding. And maybe Cody was supposed to do something like activate the ring in the upkeep if you're trying to play around the binding, but this might just be Cody setting up for the Omnath. Maybe he just values that more in the mirror rack to see how he wants to play this game out.
Well, though, right, he doesn't have one Omnath, he's got two Omnaths.
Oh, no, 19,
right? So, like, even if he values Omnath very highly, it's hard to imagine the third Omnath is that valuable.
I'm inclined to agree, but Cody is inclined to disagree. So we'll have to see how he plays it from here.
Yeah, so you can just pick up a Fury, I think, which does give the option of Omnath fetch Fury take out your Omnath, which is a pretty great sequence.
Looks like he doesn't have a fetch, but is going to discard the second of 3 Omnaths from his hand to clear the other Omnath and just pass the turn.
And I mean, this is fine. Obviously, you're a little sad not to have the land, but you can't complain too much. It looks like he's another ring and a red in hand, so overall things are still going pretty well. Gabriel does need to answer this Omnath. Even if he does, Cody is pretty easy to follow up. I still think Cody's ahead, but the game is far from decided.
I agree. Introducing Gabriel. Sure. Lining up this delay, half lane. Not mistap our mana. Good way to lose. Pretty cool tap. Has it was saving for Gabriel, and I believe a Hollow Fountain has 2 with 3 cards. Passing back to Cody, leaving him with Omnath.
But I think this is a real sign of weakness here from Gabriel, because if you had a One Ring or an Omnath here, you presumably play it, right? So Gabriel's hand just like can't be that many cards. Obviously, you could have removal of various sorts. You could have like a Solitude, a Fury, but the set of cards just isn't that wide.
Yeah, maybe an Emrakul or something Cody might be thinking about, you know, like, what does Gabriel have going on that he's besides spells? I'm sorry, it could be a spells. We do see Mystery Force picked up and gaining 4 life here off the Omnath.
Right, and that's pretty significant, I think. So what this means now is that Cody basically knows that Gabriel doesn't have much. In fact, if this fetch resolves, he's got to think, what the hell is my opponent's hand? It's got to be basically all lands and Emrakuls, right?
Yeah. Oops, all lands and Emrakuls. And you see Cody figuring out, also, I don't know if you noticed, Cody has another the One Ring in hand. And as we talked about the
it's hard to imagine what Gabriel could have had there that he wouldn't have already spent on the Omnath in terms of interaction. Whereas now he's kind of giving his opponent a chance at top deck interaction, but it's pretty minor. Regardless of that, mana plus cards that tells of his time probably going to be sufficient, I imagine.
Yeah, it looks like Gabriel's bouncing his Leyline Binding, and Cody in response is going to draw a card with the One Ring. Might Legend roll and just keep the new fresh one. Draw another card. We're going to have to see how Cody was placed exactly. Yeah.
I mean, this is definitely quite a good exchange for Gabriel, since if he takes out the ring, then the game state is actually pretty close. Both of them have Omnath and, you know, a fairly comparable number of cards. The only real problem for Gabriel will be that, well, it looks to me like the ending, or sorry, the binding may not resolve. I think there's a veto in Cody's hand.
I agree, and it looks like Cody also is solituding down on that here in response to the fetch. So Gabriel, you know, did gain his 4 life, but is not going to gain the 4 mana.
And I think this makes a lot of sense for Cody. He doesn't really need his third Omnath. His first Omnath already lived a turn, so there's not that likely of an answer for it. So better just make sure your opponent doesn't get anything going, doesn't get anything snowballing, limit their mana, and take out the Omnath. I definitely don't mind this play.
I think Ren 6 is going to be the play. Going to pick up Windswept Heath. Cody on Ren 6 and Dovin's Veto in hand. We're going to see Leyline Binding cast. Maybe there was a situation where somehow Gabriel got the mana.
That would be surprising.
Yeah, he wasn't tapping anything land, so maybe I missed something where, you know, the players quickly did something. But Dovin's Veto is going to take down the Leyline Binding. The ring's going to activate, draw a card, lose a life for Cody here. And Cody's got cards, mana, and life. Pretty good spot to be.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna try to draw.
This is going to get really brutal here, since the problem is not only is Cody drawing a million cards, he also gets just such a fast way to create deployment with the Omnath. Yeah, I mean, in general, ring plus Omnath plus fetch land is basically checkmate, and Cody's going to have that more or less every turn forever now.
Activate the ring forever and ever. as we are going to see Omnath attack down Ren and 6. Just make sure Gabriel, if Gabriel has a bunch of spells somehow despite not playing anything for the last couple turns, to make sure it's dead. Also, prevent any sort of weird stabilization than my Ren ultimates lines. Every now and again, a Ren ult can win this matchup.
I mean, I think at this point, Gabriel basically needs Emrakul. Like, I don't think he's going to win this game without at some point casting Emrakul.
Well, here it is, Andrew. As Emrakul comes down, we have exactly enough mana. We shock it in, and that trigger's going to mean Cody does not get his next turn. Gabriel does. You're going to have to see how Gabriel wants to play this.
Yeah, so Emrakul, it's interesting. The first priority when your opponent plays Emrakul is you have to get pitch elementals out of your hand. If Cody is Solitude here or whatever, he's got to get on the table, since letting your opponent discard cards from your hand, in addition to letting them kill your own stuff or whatever, is savage. Once he's gotten the pitch elementals out of his hand, there's not that much more he can do. He sort of just needs to hope that the ring isn't too savage to him, doesn't draw cards that destroy his own cards too much, and then he's able to rebuild and recover. But basically, the thing he needs most is to not draw an ending off his ring cards next turn. Since if his opponent can't move the ring, he'll probably be able to rebuild.
Yeah, and so far, Cody's hand, double Ren and 6 Stomping Grounds, not the most thing that you can punish. We do get a draw set for turn, and we have the One Ring if we want to, activate that and see how we play it.
No, I am not.
Looks like we got a draw for turn. It's Misty Rainforest.
Not the best.
Okay, this is a pretty un-Emrakulable hand. Obviously, there's 3 more cards on the way, but so far, Cody has to be feeling good.
Yeah, I wonder if Gabriel, what's the temptation on even activating the ring, right? Like, you could draw 3 cards, but is giving your opponent, another tick up in the ring so that they're going to get 4 cards when they're playing, is that worth the exchange? Or is it pretty clearly like, hey, this isn't going to work, I just got to find something?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it depends a little on Gabriel's hand, but given how much weakness he's shown in the last few turns, I sort of suspect he can't beat this board with the cards he has, so he has to hope that the top 3 cards do beat this board, which is not unrealistic, I think. So I would be inclined to activate, but I can certainly imagine not if Gabriel's picked up some nice ones in the last turns like
It looks like Gabriel is going to fail to find on the fence. Just wanted to take a look at Cody's deck Solly sideboard. Solly Emrakul for Cody as well.
And actually, if Gabriel's looking at the deck here, he knows the ending status. Like, he knows, for example, maybe if Cody has no endings, then activating the ring doesn't actually make that much sense, since then you can't take out the ring, so, like, what are we really doing here? Obviously, we don't know that. We can get to just look through the deck. But I think the number of endings he saw there is a pretty relevant factor in his decision-making process.
Agreed. It looks like what Gabriel's doing is he's playing every Ren and 6 from Cody's hand and just minusing on Cody. Unfortunately, we didn't have the 4th Ren and 6 to kill the Omnath. That would have been an all-timer moment. But, we did get this Ren 6 down by 3, and if we could draw up a Seiju, which I think we had in hand earlier, we can get rid of this Leyline Binding and have a 13-13 trample and hope it's enough.
Yeah, I mean, emphasis on hoping in that scenario, but that is fair. It's just that between Solitude and Binding, I feel like the 13-13 body rarely ends up sticking, but obviously anything's possible.
I agree it rarely ends up sticking. I also think Gabriel rarely wins this game from this point. So we're going to need some double rare moments, a shiny, if you would.
Oh, agreed. I'm certainly not saying that. I agree that as a desperation play, Gabriel might hope the 13-13 sticks. But I want to be clear that that would be desperation.
well, nothing if not desperate here, as we do see Teferi Time Raveler come down. Looks like immediately.
Specifically another Emrakul. If Gabriel has more than one, maybe that would be a good reason to bounce. But I'm also not sure how many Forklifters actually have Heroes of Emrakul.
Agreed on all accounts. They barely did it when it was the most popular and best deck, so I doubt they do it now, but players might be doing things. We do see a Solitude to pick up here, and this lack of pressure, if Gabriel can find something like the One Ring, he might be able to pull out of this, but we are seeing Cody fetch here. Worth noting, this is Cody's 3rd Omnath that's dying right now. We pitched the other 2 to Fury and Solitude earlier in the game to get some big swings and get control of the board, but still, Gabriel has a ton of life left over.
Yeah, it is definitely pretty interesting how many Omnaths Cody's expended. The resource for Omnaths in deck rarely comes up, but could be relevant here. If Cody does run out of Omnaths, then he'll kind of need to sustain his life through the ring on Solitude attacks and whatnot. which is possible, but it's certainly not quite as convenient or quite as low risk as just sitting there playing lands with Omnath.
It looks like Gabriel is going to leyline binding. Looks like Cody's responding. Forgot wants to do anything.
I'm going to cast my only line binding. Target your line binding.
It looks like he's going to bind the binding. That way the ring sticks around.
Yeah, so he has the option to reset, but he says, no, no, no. I would like 4 cards, please.
Yeah, and Gabriel is going to Bosage the leyline binding, which gets back the binding. I heard you like binding. Binding your ring. Now, you know, if Cody wanted those cards, he's going to have another leyline binding or something to prevent this from sticking.
Yes.
Well, he does have the option of just Teferi bouncing the binding and getting 1 card off the ring. Presumably, it will then just be re-removed, but sort of, you know, use the Teferi minus as a divination, which, if he doesn't have much in his hand, would make a decent amount of sense, I think. Yeah. So, Cody does probably have the option of Prismatic Ending for 5 on the Solitude in order to kind of protect his Planeswalkers, and while that's not exciting, it's acceptable. Might be where he goes here.
Yeah, it looks like maybe Cody forgot to draw off his Teferi. We'll have Honor Arc check in. I think this is a live match. We'll see what we can do. But Ren 6 is going to take up after we play the Stomping Ground tap. Just going to Misty in our hand.
Go ahead.
We're on actually a bit of a delay on this one. That way we can show you as much of the magic as we could. So we can't go back and fix that. But we will try to, you know, make sure to maintain game state as best we can. It's Gabriel's going to draw for the turn.
So I didn't get a great look at what Gabriel picked up there. I think he drew a spell.
Put his hand down as a thinker. Oh, Ren 6 to Fairy Time Raveler, and I think a Leyline Binding as the last 3 or 4 of the land.
Okay, so his hand is okay. It's not that compelling. He can keep fighting over this ring. All of these exchanges aren't that great for him, but on the other hand, it does seem like Cody's drawn a string of lands, which, hey, does happen in the mirror, and maybe Gabriel has an opportunity to make a comeback.
Yeah, and this Teferi could be huge. Getting this Boseiju back, like you mentioned, Leyline Binding is a big part of the game, and right now Leyline Binding is hiding a 13/13 Trampler underneath it. I'm going to tell Gabriel's coming down a bit, making sure he's not going to mess anything up here.
And I mean, I think this makes sense. Even though it's a matchup you want to play quickly, obviously you should pick your spots, find the high leverage moments, and really take your time.
Yeah, you play quickly so when you get to these moments, you can afford that extra 3 seconds or whatever. As we do see a Teferi Time Raveler coming down.
Very good. Sure.
Does it take up the pass or the turn?
Oh, interesting. So he didn't rebind the ring,
Okay.
right? Because he had the option to, but he's now completely declined it since Teferi obviously means he's not going to be casting it off. Interesting. I wonder what he's trying to do with his binding instead.
I'm also curious. I really wonder if Gabriel's going for the 13 damage is a lot line. You know what I mean? And just trying to hit Cody. Because it would make sense that maybe he wants to save the binding because he has the Boseiju in hand and he wants to like make sure that, you know, no one can cast any spells at instant speed. And he's just trying to make sure like maybe Emrakul hits, then he unsummons it with Teferi and then replays it. Like that could be the thing he's trying to set up. And so if the Teferi gets bound, he wants to bound it back and play around somehow the Ren 6 dying, you know, and not getting the Boseiju back again. So Gabriel clearly has a plan here. We're going to have to see if it's going to be good enough to overcome this huge advantage Cody had early. But, you know, Cody has just drawn a lot of lands and cards that haven't been super impactful. Got a Fury this turn, so that card is pretty powerful.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think his plan is to get back the Emrakul, to bounce it with Zone Teferi, and to basically hope that's good enough. Now, there's a lot Cody can do at this plan. For example, this Teferi might not be in play later. The Emrakul can be removed. There's a bunch of issues. But if that comes to pass, I think Gabriel has a good shot. The second Emrakul trigger is savage.
Yeah. We talked about how, you know, people didn't even do it back in the old days when this deck was one of the best, if not the best deck. And, you know, this play pattern did come up then, as we do see a Teferi take up. And a Misty Ring Force was played for Cody and a passing of the turn. We are going to see Gabriel end of turn. Here's that Boseiju, and Cody did not go to, you know, answer the Teferi Time Raveler when he had the chance.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big old chunk. And I mean, with Teferi in play, we can attack him, take the turn, and then kill the Teferi to bounce the Fury, kill the Fury to kill one of our own things with pitch elementing. This is going to be huge.
Oh, it's going to be completely savage. I think Cody did not. I think he did not process that kind of the bouncing the Emrakul was the option here, because I think he has a leyline binding. And it's not unreasonable to hold the leyline binding for a better target into a Teferi on 5, but if that Teferi is doing the specific action of bouncing your own Emrakul, then it's definitely worth it, right? So my guess as to what happened here is that Cody was not aware that this was a kind of possible outcome, because yeah, it's gonna be really, really, really bad for him.
Cody couldn't cast anything at the end of turn because Teferi was in play. Looks like we have Prismatic Ending, Leyline Binding, Teferi Time Raveler, 2 lands, and a Preordain.
Yeah, so this is going to be completely savage. So let's see it. Gabriel can, at the very least, kill the ring with the pending. He can minus the Teferi on something. It could be his own Fury, although he doesn't necessarily have anything else to kill. Maybe he like bounces it, re-Teferis, and then Furies the second Teferi. Especially if he like finds the right card to pitch. He could also bounce his own Emrakul back, is sometimes nice, although that's kind of a double-edged sword, since sometimes you have to exhaust all the resources you actually want to attack with their team.
Yeah, it's interesting here, for sure, when it comes to that. I think Fury can also technically hit itself, too, although I don't know if we have the mana to do both those things. So that's something we're definitely have to keep in mind here. Looks like Gabriel's just going to straight-up play the new Teferi.
Okay, I mean, I don't mind that. He's trying to, like, minimize the number of draws Cody will have.
Love this line. Get rid of the brand new one that has 4 loyalty. That way when we do minus the Teferi, it's just gone.
Sure. Crack Welties.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And he can actually use this Preordain to scry in a way unfavorable to Cody, like top lands and bottom spells, which is also surprisingly effective.
Yeah, bottom spells. Looks like Gabriel's not going to go for any mana here. Just taking the shuffle. Honestly, Cody might not have that many lands left in the deck. There's been a lot of fetching, a lot of Visageing. Emrakul to the bottom, the Light Halfling on top. Sorry to do a little predictive casting there, but I assume that's the only play we can see here, as Gabriel is going to attack the Fury and then get it blocked by the Emrakul. What a weird attack from Cody. He must have had some plan in mind there, but...
Yeah. I think the plan being gibbering insanity, yes.
Yeah, and we are bouncing the Emrakul back to hand to play around that binding. And that means, you know, Gabriel, unless he has another answer to the Teferi off the top of his deck, is going to get Emrakul again. And you see Gabriel smile. He knows he's gotten away with something here. Earlier in this game, he was very far behind, as the Lighted Halfling is the play for turn here to start off for Cody.
Yeah, and this is pretty interesting, I think, honestly, just because... Alright, so Gabriel's very far ahead now. The advantage bar is completely flipped. But he hasn't really figured out a kill or decisive win. And replaying Emrakul immediately is not exactly getting the most value out of the card, because you know that your opponent has so few resources. There's some temptation here, I think, to wait, but also some temptation to just slam it, try to close the door sort of before they find things, and I'm not exactly sure what's correct.
Yeah, I'm not either. I think I like what Gabriel... failed fine, but luckily we're getting the Emrakul off the bottom of our deck, so that's worth the 1 life. But yeah, I wonder if Gabriel's idea is basically hoping to pick up something else that he can throw under the Leyline Binding bus, because the Leyline Binding is there and Cody can't play it. So we're going to have to see what's going on here. I'm really curious, Andrews. We do have a Solitude picked up for the turn. We can evoke, get rid of the Leyline Binding, and kill the Delighted Halfling. And I guess we can also just do nothing and attack the Halfling in, which is a little more boring, but more efficient. Either way, that is huge.
Yes, I mean, Solitude there was the best possible draw from Gabriel's seat. The worst possible draw from Cody's seat.
I have to imagine Gabriel's actually unlocked a brand new version of this deck, Ellen Bogan, which I'm going to call 4-color Scam, because it feels like he scammed Cody out of this game. Just every single turn and draw step has been insane here for Gabriel. Playing incredibly well, and both players have to get to this position. Looks like we're hard casting the Solitude. Decided not to evoke it. Maybe a small step up? Unsure. I don't think Gabriel had another Visages. It might be possible Gabriel boarded in more Visages. We saw that Cody decided not to bring in the 2 from his sideboard. Teferi is dead now. And Teferi, off the top for Cody, has a good draw. We're going to see it unsummon the Solitude and take a draw for the turn.
Yeah, I think that was a mistake from Gabriel. And Look, I get it. When you play the 4-color mirror, you take a bajillion game actions per turn. It's very easy to miss something in the kind of quagmire of things occurring. But now with this Elish Norn, I think Cody's not just gone back to parity, but in the driver's seat.
I agree. Twitch chat's favorite word during Wordle has come on the board, and she has taken over this game. We have very few answers to her, as a preordained is going to come down. The One Ring and Solitude are the 2 cards on top, but I don't know. We're going to have to find... I guess we can Teferi to remove... I guess the real line is both Seijuing down the Leyline Mining and blocking the Elishor with your Emrakul. Truly a cosmic horror battle.
Yep.
Well, right. So if Gabriel gets back to stage, which I presume that he will, then Cody will know that and will not be able to attack with the Elish Norn. But that isn't to say that the Elish Norn will be like handled. Cody getting double value out of all those triggers and half of Gabriel's cards not functioning is still pretty savage. And the main way that you can actually remove Elish Norn in the mirror is Prismatic Ending, which is already stressed pretty far between turning halflings on turn 1, permanently expiring rings, and dealing with fairies at 5 loyalty. So Gabriel's not going to have a lot of options. Now,
yeah, I think Gabriel had
ring.
Yeah, he does have the ring, so he'll find some options. It feels like Gabriel had to draw a Boseiju and not run in 6, you know? He had to trick the Elish Norn into combat. But now, like you mentioned, that's not going to happen as we do see Preordained to Preordained. A lot better than Seer Visions.
Yeah, in the words of Tristan, Preordained to Preordained, whole deck wins.
See some mana being tapped. Looks like 4. Is it the One Ring or is it Omnath? It is the One Ring. Wow,
Alright, so
double
now Cody's
protection.
going to be very protected.
Double protection.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. I'm gonna respond. Sure. I'm not gonna respond.
Looks like Gabriel is going to respond.
Double.
Yeah, you have double protection.
Yeah, yeah.
Nah, looks like, never mind. Whatever, draw your cards. Draw your last pathetic card, Kaiba. As Cody picks up a card. I don't think he looked at it. I love that. He's just like, whatever. Give me your card.
Given that all the ETB triggers are doubled, I think Cody's cards are going to be anything but pathetic here.
Yeah. Well, I was just making a bit of a reference to the old Yu-Gi-Oh! You know, a little set of kind. It looks like Gabriel almost walked into the Elish Norn trap, deciding against it. These players have been gaming all weekend, and there's a lot of time pressure on this, you know. Gabriel's doing, you know, making a good job. Took a couple seconds to think through, but generally speaking, both players have been playing at a competitive pace, trying to give each other a chance to play all 3 games, which is what you love to see here when we're battling it out in the 4-color mirrors. As Elish Norn has been picked up and getting attacked at Rin 6, we could see the Boseiju channeled, and that is going to be huge. Looks like Gabriel doesn't want to channel the Leyline Binding.
What are we missing here?
Maybe there isn't a green land left in the deck. I actually can't tell what mana Gabriel has. I know he has a Windswept Teeth, but it's possible he's just out of green. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Which Triumph is that next to it? I can't tell which Triumph.
I think it's the Andatha, and I only know that because of the shame I have. And he's got everything lined up. He just needs to not somehow take 20 damage next turn. The ring will give protection.
Does protection stop Emrakul? How is it worded?
I think it says you have protection. I'm unsure, to be honest. I have not played much 4-color since the rings come out. So.
You're still at 20?
Target opponent.
Yeah.
I will draw Emrakul.
He just doesn't get the trigger. He was supposed to wait a turn, I think.
Yeah, I think he was too. Unless we messed up on the ring, but I'm pretty sure that was the turn the ring had come down. Yeah, very awkward. Once again, we are 4 minutes in the future. We will make these things known. And it looks like there's someone watching the game too next to Gabriel. That might just be another player on a log in a strapping red shirt. Looks like.
Am I allowed to control myself?
Yeah.
Is him taking my turn?
Yeah, Gabriel's asking the question. I play this Emrakul. I control myself. Do I do it, or does Cody do it? How does this work?
Well,
I believe the way it works is Cody does it, because it's a new turn. And it would be Gabriel's turn, then back to Cody's original turn, I think is how it works. But it's been a while for me since I've had this interaction come up.
Yeah, chat points out pretty relevantly, it's also possible that the double protection trigger was missed.
Oh yeah, I guess you. Well, I don't think you can miss it as long as you remember it, but it is possible to miss it. That is true.
Right, like if Gabriel just plays the Emrakul, and then Cody's like, all right, and then reveals his hand. Gabriel's competitive. Yeah, I'm not sure which businesses we do and do not say that, but good to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Looks like Cody doesn't have that much stuff to be messed with here.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up a couple turns ago, and then Emrakul's kept getting slammed. One thing about this game is Gabriel has drawn, like, way less of the removal spells, and Cody's drawn a bunch of them. So, like, Cody just doesn't have a lot of things left to actually answer cards, right? He's just kind of down to, I think this is the last Omnath. I think there's 2 Solitudes left in the deck, and there's this Emrakul. I'm sorry, this Elshnorn and the Emrakul in hand. And I think that's it when it comes to things that, like, can actually win the game, because we used a lot of endings. We trimmed some bolts from our deck during Sideway himself and Cody. So I think he's just low on ways to actually remove things.
I mean, if that's true, it's really going to reduce the impact of Emrakul, because obviously what you want is as many uses as possible. But Cody just counted his deck, and I think that is a quite shrewd game action at this point. Cody has drawn a lot more cards than his opponent. He's actually bringing a lot more time. Even though the game state is at parity, most of the cards that were expended to like kind of reduce Cody's board were Cody's. So,
which is really funny.
Possible. Yeah, but that means like Gabriel's Winged tier might legitimately be decking.
I do love a good decking line, as it does look like we're just double checking this is the mana we want to tap, as Emrakul is going to come down. It looks like we played the Boseiju from hand. We're going to Solitude the Emrakul. I think he has 9 cards in deck.
I think 9 is correct. I'm not 100% sure. It's more or less impossible to be confident from our seeds, but I counted the same as you did.
Wow. I don't know about you, but I think you're 100% correct. So.
Right. I mean, if this Emrakul sticks, 8 turns is gonna be enough. Looks like Gabriel's hand can't be messed with too much, but he might be able to do some funny things. For example, if he is worried about decking, he can actually use Binding on his own ring. He's not going to use it anyway, and then he'll stop taking damage, which might be a good usage. He also can try to like play both rings and kill one of them, but that's a lot of mana, and he might prefer to spend the mana instead messing with other aspects of what's going on, such as Rage of Ferrying.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, he's gonna do his ever. He liked what Gabriel did, so he's you know copying that line. Wow, that's huge. I was gonna say one way Gabriel might be able to win, Andrew, was just chaining rings and just taking a turn off protection, you know, and hoping to find a Solitude. But if Cody can just expend like 2 rings here, take another turn with Emrakul, you know, after the ring protection runs out, then we might be able to actually cross the finish line, and Gabriel can't just stall us out.
Yeah, I think it might make sense for Cody to do that, to play ring into ring, only because he knows he kind of has another Emrakul coming, so it's like very weird. He's incentives that he wouldn't normally have.
Looks like Cody is Leyline binding his own Solitude for right now. That might be a sign that he has Boseiju in hand and wants to have, a Solitude on instant speed through a Teferi. Looks like he didn't have enough mana to double ring like I was talking about there. That's my mistake there, chat. But we do have 3 rings and a Dovin's Veto for Gabriel here.
Well, Dovin's Veto might be an actively bad draw for Gabriel, because he knows that another Emrakul is coming, and when that happens, the Veto will probably hit his own spell. Now, the complication is he can delay the Emrakul a lot using the ring. So if he is aware, which I understand is based on what's happened in this game, he may or may not be, but if he's aware that Emrakul targets, then things are going to get pretty interesting.
Yeah, it looks like Omnath, this is the play. We drew a Preordain. Gabriel might want to Preordain, just like you mentioned before, to make sure he doesn't get, a bad Preordain of himself. Gabriel obviously no oopsie poopsie there. We got a little Preordain. By the way, what's the Emrakul count on this game, Andrew? Is it like 5?
It's absurd, yes. This is the most Emrakuls I believe I have ever seen in a single game.
You take 2 and go 26. Yep. Off my turn.
Cody taking 2 to 26.
Like, I've played a lot of 4-color games where one player Emrakuls, then another player Emrakuls later. I think games where each player Emrakuls like greater than twice are absurd.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a game where I went like the line that Gabriel did, where it's like, all right, I'm gonna bounce my own Emrakul like with your Teferi, and like not like immediately won. So this is such an insane game that we're getting to watch here on coverage, as we are gonna see Prismatic Ending knock out the Omnath. Looks like an attack
Okay,
down on the Teferi.
So 31 all.
Emrakul was played.
Gain 4.
Let's
Up
see.
to 35.
4 life for Cody up to 35.
Good.
Yeah, so, okay, last time this was essentially let through, I assume because of this ring checker. But now, like, we're in this weird gray zone where...
I'll lose 1.
If-
Down 30.
Oh, wait, so does Gabriel... Yeah, Gabriel knows. Yeah, he's like, nope, I have protection from everything. That Emrakul doesn't do anything. And Cody, having missed it the last time, was unaware of that, so he still cast the Emrakul. Big swing for Gabriel.
Huge swing there, and picked up a prismatic ending for the turn 2, so we might see something actually start to, you know, stabilize the board. We do have
Cody's to make him draw many cards, which would deck him extremely quickly. I don't know if that's possible, but it is something on my mind at this point in time.
Half lane. Pass.
You know what would be actually crazy is if Cody brought in, like, had a main deck endurance and kept it, because he's like, well, sometimes the games go long.
My library.
And then, you know, during the 80 card days, sometimes you would just have endurances in your deck because, you know, you didn't have cards that were, you know, better in your sideboard or whatever. You're like, yeah, 3-4 flash. I have one. It happens. As we do see a Visage you picked up there for Gabriel.
I imagine that these days the lists are so squeezed on slots that it's hard for endurance to make its way in the mirror. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's very likely. Endurance does a few nice things in the mirror. It can, like, fizzle a Ren trigger and it can delay their Emrakul, but ultimately it's, I think, a pretty temporary measure that those Rens and Emrakuls will eventually be good.
Yeah. Looks like Honorog is talking to the head judge about something. They might be talking about time and round procedure or whatever, just making sure. I'm honestly no idea what the time and round is. We're in turn 0. All right, so looks like we are hit the part where Gabriel was gonna maybe win just via decking and might still just win naturally via decking the time allotted. You know, Cody does not have many cards left in deck, as Elshore does come down for the turn.
Yeah, I'll pass to you.
I will take 2. The 31.
I mean, this is... So, okay, wait a minute. Gabriel's up 1-0.
Yeah.
So, he doesn't even need to, like, finish the decking of Cody right now. Whether or not there are turns to Cody deck is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that Gabriel cannot die in these turns, and then he wins, essentially.
Agreed.
That's one, right?
And I would guess that both players are acutely aware of that. In fact, Cody is likely into top 8 on a draw, I would guess. Maybe I'm wrong. But from Cody's perspective, if he wins this game and gets a draw, that's not a bad outcome for him.
I agree. I do think Cody was in with a draw because we saw Dave Shields draw pretty safely in X and 2 this same round. I think the hard part is just going to be Cody actually doing the 30 damage. You know? This is turn 2. Means Cody has 2 more turns to attack. Which it's not impossible, given Emrakul is, you know, a ton of damage. But, I think Gabriel has the 4th ring in hand. He's finally found them.
Yeah, I think Gabriel's going to have enough time to stay alive here. He's also just at 30. Like, it takes a long time to clean it up. He has Elish Norns, so any interaction he has is going to be incredibly effective, buy him a lot of time. Yeah, it's sort of hard for me to imagine that Cody has enough attack steps to get through this 30 life and these ring triggers.
Agreed. Yes, we do see another Fury coming down. It's going to clean up the miscellaneous creatures and the Fury, because we have double from the Elish Norn.
So, look, Cody's down to just Emrakul. He's already taken his turn 1. I believe this is turn 2. So Cody's next turn will be turn 3. Emrakul can't kill Gabriel in 2 attacks, even if there were no ring triggers and there is a ring trigger. So I think Gabriel has managed, by the skin of his teeth, to steal this game and will be moving on to 10-3-1.
Yeah, congratulations to Gabriel. I assume that will be just good enough to sneak into top 12. We're going to have to see how it actually plays out. But what a crazy game, too. Gabriel, remember when we were talking about, like, wait, why are we Presaging? Why aren't we Presaging? He had these plans fought ahead the entire game and got rewarded despite being incredibly far behind early. And Cody tried to do a good job of being ahead, but just could not stop it, as we do see the Rain response to kill ourselves in the draw. And Gabriel is going to win 2-0. Congratulations. That is going to do it for our round number 13. I don't know what the plan is, if we're going to watch another backup match while players start top 8. I don't know what's going to happen, but congratulations, Gabriel. Well played. We're going to actually take a quick little break and give you all some Wordle action. So make sure to click that follow button, that way you don't miss any of the action going on here today. We're going to talk about our sponsors before top 8. It's pretty exciting. We have some really handsome ones this weekend, I think at least. We'll have to see how Andrew feels about it. But we'll be right back with some more Magic action.